So first, let's talk about blockchain. So what is blockchain? Well, blockchain is a technology that enables transactions based on an encrypted, decentralized ledger system. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, what is a ledger system? Well, a ledger is a record of transactions. So anything to change, any time that something changes hand, is a transaction. So when we go to a store, buy something, that's a transaction. When we transfer money from one party to another, that's a transaction. But even within a company, when you pass a product development from one department to another, and that is a transaction. So all the transactions are kept are kept somewhere. All the records of transactions are kept somewhere, and that record is a ledger. So most of the time, the ledger is kept internally or is kept by a trusted third party. But blockchain allows a decentralized ledger system being kept, meaning that identical transaction records can be stored, can be kept in multiple locations. But that is not good if we don't have a safe way to do that. Right? So that's where the cryptography or encryption comes in. So we use cryptography to guarantee that the storage and retrieval of all the records on blockchain are safe and guaranteed. So that is from a technology perspective, that's what blockchain does. So blockchain is a technology that allows this to happen. So if multiple parties, if everybody implements blockchain for a particular type of transaction, then the decentralized ledger system can be kept safely. But from a business perspective, we also want to know what blockchain really does for us. And that is, so what the blockchain enables is a platform that actually coordinates the transactions in a trustless manner. So what does that mean? So blockchain allows us to trust the platform, not the authority. So going back to a financial transaction, if we transfer money from party A to party B, we use a bank because the bank is the trusted authority. But if we have a blockchain system that keeps track of money transfer, such as what the Bitcoin does, then we can actually keep all the transactions in distributed ledgers. That if we believe that the platform can create trusted ledger system that everybody can look up, that is always safe, that is always true, then we don't need a bank as the trustee to guarantee and to enable all the transactions to happen. We can just use this platform so that all the transactions can take place in a trustless manner. And this is huge when we have to deal with many different types of transactions, as we'll talk about in the next few slides. So schematically, when we use blockchain technology, the transactions are all recorded in blocks. So each one, so for instance, in this example, every 50 transactions are recorded in a block. And the blocks are all encrypted, and also the links from one block to another, they're all encrypted also. And once they're all encrypted, then the different blocks can be stored in multiple locations. So the encryption key has to be used for storage and retrieval. That's why we call it blockchain, because all the transactions are recorded in blocks and they're chained together using encryption. There are two ways to implement blockchain. So a product, a cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin, is implemented in the permissionless blockchain, which means that the blockchain or the ledger is available to everyone, and anyone can enter it, anyone can use it, as long as we apply the same cryptography. But blockchain can also implement it in a private environment, so within the country, within one company, or by a group of companies. So that is called permission blockchain. Only the approved companies or approved parties can actually join in, and so the encryption is limited to those parties, to those companies who are in this group, so they can actually have a blockchain, have a ledger system only to themselves. So why do we want to use blockchain? Well, because blockchain has a lot of advantages, such as security and transparency of the ledgers. and all the records in the ledgers, all the transaction records in the ledgers are traceable, immutable, and permanent. And if we use the blockchain system, the blockchain technology, we can distributively store the ledgers. So instead of using a third-party trustee, such as the bank, which can be very, very costly. So based on those advantages, based on those properties, there are many applications being created. So the most famous ones are the cryptocurrencies, such as Bitcoin, and also the financial transactions, such as remittance, so transferring money from one country to another. But there are also new applications are being created. They're not yet popular, but they are there already. And if you look at what's going on today, you can imagine that there are probably a lot more applications of blockchains that will pop up in the next few years. Digital identity takes advantage of the traceability and permanency of blockchain. There are many supply chain applications because blockchain allows traceability and permanency. And then there's something called smart contract because blockchain ledger system allows immutability and cost reduction in creating contract. So one example of the supply chain application of blockchain is the traceability of food supply. So there's some companies that are already implementing this or in the process of implementing this. So the one company that comes to mind is Walmart. So the main reason for this is to make sure that the food safety is implemented. So how do we ensure food safety? Well, we want to keep track of the food production all the way from when the ingredients are produced, all to the production side, to the processing side, and all the way to distributors and retail. And every time the food ingredients or processed food get changed hands, it's always recorded in the blockchain network, so that everybody who's getting the product, who's using the product, who's buying the product can actually see a particular can actually see the history of this particular food item. So so where does it come from? How many times has it got changed hands? What process has been done, and everything. So the blockchain allows all the records being kept, and also as a consumer, we can actually look it up and then see all of the companies, all of the producers, all of the processors, and the farms that are actually involved in the production of this particular product. So let's say that a problem of food supply, an outbreak of a disease because of the contamination of a particular food item. Then we can go back and trace the production of the food and try to find what step created the problem. Maybe it's the farm, maybe it's the producer, maybe it's a processor, and everything. So this system really allows the implementation of food safety. So one potentially exciting area of blockchain application is smart contract. What is a smart contract? Smart contract is a system that automatically activates certain activities when something happens. So you can enter an agreement between two parties or multiple parties, so that the system, this particular blockchain system, will monitor the many different situations. So when there's a publicly available event that's being recorded, then all the transactions will automatically happen and being recorded in many different places. So the ledger is automatically created because not only the ledger will record not only the initial agreement, but also all of the different things that may happen that affects the activities within the agreement, and then the execution of certain steps. Those are all recorded. So one example of the smart contract is this flight delay insurance that's offered by AXA in Europe. So when you when you take a flight, when the flight is delayed, it may hurt you both in terms of the time, but also financially. So you may want to buy a flight delay insurance, so somebody is going to compensate you for that loss. And this particular insurance is implemented using blockchain that monitors the flights automatically. So every time when you enter into this insurance contract, a blockchain ledger is created and is stored in multiple locations, not only in Access system, but you can look it up using using any of the encrypted keys that you're given, and it monitors the flight information. So when the flight is delayed for a certain amount of time, then you automatically get the payment. There's no claim to file, there's no record to keep, and because so every time when something happens, it's all recorded in this ledger, in this blockchain ledger. So everything is smartly executed because it's a public blockchain system. People get excited about blockchain because of Bitcoin initially, right? And then a lot of people look at blockchain and think that this is a solution to many different problems. But as we saw on the previous slide, that there's a lot of applications. But just like every single emerging technology, there's also a lot of problems and barriers associated with blockchain. So no matter how encrypted a ledger system is, it's never secure. It's never 100% secure. So the privacy issue is always there. There's a lot of regulatory uncertainties, and also the whether we can scale up the blockchain or not. That's a big question. So for instance, if we want to use a blockchain the blockchain in supply chain to guarantee the full security, how many blockchain can we create using when we have one system? So can we really keep track of every single food item? So that can actually become really costly. And blockchain is a completely new system, a new way of processing. So the initial buying can be very difficult. It's a very high startup cost. It requires a lot of capabilities and technologies, and the cost savings can be very hard to come by. So if we want to introduce blockchain into many different areas of company operation, that can actually be a huge barrier because of the startup cost and because of the initial difficulty in terms of technology. Just like any of the potential emerging technology, potentially disruptive technologies, blockchain is great. But if you have to look at the true applications based on the advantages of this particular technology. So don't try to implement blockchain in everything. There are areas where blockchain will do a lot of good for your operation. And if you can identify those operations, if you can identify the great applications based on the advantages and to avoid the potential problems, then blockchain can really change how we do business in certain areas.